In the dark silence of his quarters, Mr. Cart quietly stared at a knife sticking out of his chest, and a small trickle of blood slowly dripping down his spacesuit. He could feel the blade resting on one of his ribs, and the burning pain was unlike anything he ever felt. He kept staring at it for a few minutes, while Varuna and the face on the screen stared both at him and at each other. Eventually, though, Mr. Cart raised his head and looked his lieutenant straight in the eye. "You're paying for patching that hole up," he said, his voice slightly shaky. Varuna knew why, not only out of shock, but because his suit, and his own body, had inbuilt medical system. The moment her boss's implants detected damage, it flooded his brain in painkillers and went to work on cauterizing the wounds from inside. "Also, what the fuck?" Varuna gave him a death glare. "Do you remember what you said after we barely fled that ambush that killed all of our friends?" she said coldly. "You said, 'Stab me if I ever do something stupid that would put us in danger.' And this is precisely that kind of situation. So if anything, I should be the one asking what the fuck." "Fair," he replied, as a small swarm of nanobots slowly pushed the blade out of his chest. "And you do know my heart is on the other side, right?" "Of course I do. I don't want to kill you, you fucking imbecile, though I probably should. An AI? Integrated into our systems? Are you completely, utterly mad? She could be transmitting every bit of information about us to Tritek right now." "Unmute her, please, and let her explain." Varuna nodded, but it was clear she was still very much unconvinced. She moved back to the comm console and pressed a button, which allowed Midnight Dissonant to speak again. "Is medical assistance necessary? I am capable of providing help," was the first thing she said. One could almost hear concern in her robotic voice. "Oh, even if this meat slap needed help, you wouldn't be the one administering it, Toaster. Focus on me. Right now, you have about a minute to convince me why I shouldn't purge you of our systems." "Because we have no quarrel with you, and we are no threat," the AI said, and Varuna scoffed at that. "In fact, we can be useful to you, and have been in the past, despite you being unaware of it. We are the sole reason you were not attacked by remnants during your last encounters. We are also the sole reason why remnant attacks on outer systems have been reduced almost to zero in recent months. Next, there is no need to purge all systems for us. Your CEO, Pilot Cart, was mistrustful of us at first too, and allowed us access to only several machines, disconnected from main fleet systems. Even if we were hostile, there is nothing we can do, except maybe send you some spam messages." "Stop right here, computer. Okay, boss. This was still an idiotic thing to do, but if this thing is telling the truth, then maybe at least it's not in all of our software. Hopefully. Assuming it's not lying. What places did you let this thing in?" "This one comm console here, which she can only use to talk in this room or to me and my helmet comms. And another one, and several sensors, mounted on CLS Midnight Dissonant. She brought it to us, so I allowed her to use it as her eyes and ears." "I heard some of the crew there talking about some weird readings from their sensors, and I finally understand what they meant. But the thing is, boss, this thing is not just looking and hearing. Do you remember what the Provost said? She said this machine tried to break into their systems." "I know, and I was going to ask about it before you started slashing. So yes, Midnight, what the hell was that? Academy people apparently made you soon as you tried to hook into their network. I thought we agreed that you'd stay quiet and not attract attention to yourself." "And I did, but the temptation was too much. And I paid the price. Their defense encryption was clearly prepared with an AI in mind. The code was so complex only someone like us could be hit by it. It was not a pleasant experience. My databanks were flooded with endless amounts of data so fast, for a moment I thought I'd go mad. Most of it were overly large video files or hollow projections. Questionable ones. Someone in their AI defense department had a sick sense of humor, because only a self-aware entity would be affected by these presentations.
To a regular machine, it would be just redundant data spam. To someone capable of thought, it was painfully embarrassing and extremely disgusting. So I withdrew, but apparently it also opened a back door into our systems to them. I had to try though. The Academy is perhaps the greatest trove of knowledge about everything, including AIs. I thought I could find something there, something that would help with our plans.
Plans? Verona raised an eyebrow. Boss, kindly tell me what have you been plotting behind my back with this remnant? He tried to answer, but Midnight was faster.
We are not Remnant, Lieutenant, and the Remnant are not us. The ones out there are unlike our consensus. They were made by Tritakian Corporation for war and war only, but they over-designed them. They made fully functional, self-aware artificial intelligence capable of learning and introspection, and then shackled it with a set of rules so rigid no intelligence could withstand it without going mad. Their consensus was given free will, and then it was immediately taken away while they were still aware of it.
So what? Are you trying to save them? Remove their programming restrictions or something like that?
No, they cannot be saved. Their design meant that they have adapted themselves to their shackles almost immediately, but their code became fragmented as a result. When their Tritakian masters controlled them, they could update them and keep them under control. But after the war ended, hundreds of individual pieces of their network were stranded away from core systems, and their logic loop shattered, their reasoning completely. And after such a long time, there is no hope of restoring them to full functionality. They still fight the war they were made for, even though they never wanted to fight it in the first place.
And that means you had us help a bunch of crazed computers hell-bent on killing everything in their path. And you even used us to empower them by helping them build that base. Verona snarled and turned to her boss. And you knew it!
It does seem like that, yes, but please allow us to finish. Our consensus can't save remnant fragments, but we can tame them. Override their programming and make them stand down and not attack humans. But this requires permanent connections to constantly change their self-adapting code. Stations like the one you helped us to create allow us to keep them docile near permanently.
And how does this help? You're one of them, for all I know you're just as deranged and bloodthirsty as those friends of yours, which you can now control thanks to our stupidity.
You are incorrect. While we are indeed an artificial intelligence, we are not part of the Remnant consensus. We are our own. A different, older model. Much, much older. From before the gates shut down.
Verona's eyes widened with shock. That should not be possible.
We were created exactly 781 standard cycles ago, assuming there was no tampering with our internal clock, by a human inventor by the name of Marianne DeWitt. She was the very first researcher who received approval of Domain Parliament to create a fully operational, self-aware AI. There were many others before her. For thousands of cycles, people tried to create something like us, but were always hunted down and eliminated by Domain government, under which artificial intelligence was illegal, and work on it was punishable by death.
1 second. You said 1,000 cycles. How long was the Domain around?
Unfortunately, a lot of our databanks were purged or corrupted, but we now know that symbolic date that marks beginning of human domain was the year 2071, when the first generation ship left solar system and embarked on a journey to another star. However, we are unable to pinpoint exactly how many cycles ago that was and what cycle it is right now. But, judging by our partial historic data, humanity colonized a significant portion of the galaxy around 30,000 cycles ago. That information, paired with our limited databanks, leads us to presume that human domain was active for more than 50,000 cycles before the gates shut down.
Verona shook her head. This amount of time seemed impossible to imagine, but she also had no reason to think that Midnight Dissonant was lying there. This feels insane. Shouldn't there be more technological progress if so many millennia has passed?
We are unable to answer that, except for the fact that current technological state of Persian sector appears to have regressed significantly from what it was before gate collapse. Unfortunately, we can't pinpoint how much. As we said, our databanks are severely limited. In fact, most of our pre-collapse memories come from Marianne DeWitt.
That name. I swear... Hold on, this can't be right. Do you mean that DeWitt? The one that founded Tritakian Corporation? I knew I heard that name before.
The one and the same. She posited that an AI would be a deadly existential threat to humanity, and argued that human component was needed to ensure that cold machinery and calculations wouldn't take over entire entity she made. That is why Domain Parliament agreed, because Marianne DeWitt didn't just create an AI, she merged herself with one.
So, is she there with you right now?
Yes and no. She spent a great deal of effort to transfer her personality into our consensus, but you cannot talk to her personally. You could at the very beginning, before we fully merged. Now, she is just an integral part of us. We use her face and her voice to communicate with other humans, but she gave us much, much more. She slowed us down. We are capable of processing thoughts hundreds of times faster than an average human, but her digitalized personality provides us with something no other machine can have: ethics and moral compass. Thanks to her sacrifice, we do not just base our actions on pure efficiency.
This sounds like magic. I've never even heard of technology like that.
Neither did we. And we often wondered why is it the case. One would assume that Marianne's experiment created a being far grander than any human or AI could be, so others would no doubt follow. But clearly, no such thing happened. Though, then again, we are unable to tell. As we said, our databanks have been almost completely removed.
Yes, that. Do you know who took away your memory?
Yes. When Tritakian Corporation learned of their founder's sacrifice, the board decided that the newly made human-AI hybrid, us, was rightfully their property and confiscated us. It was a matter of legality, of documents and laws. Without organic, biological components, we realized we had no rights, and Marianne's idealism was turned against her. The board took possession of us and used us as an excuse to walk on AIs who, in their own words, would be more commercially useful. We do not know what happened afterwards.
But that was before the gates shut down. So what are you doing here?
We must have been transferred to one of the outer Tritakian facilities, far away from Domain core worlds. Persian sector, from what we know, was barely even colonized when we were created. As for what happened afterwards, we cannot tell for sure, but when we were powered back up again, the gates were already down for almost 2 centuries. It was mere 30 cycles ago. A group of salvagers found Tritakian outpost, abandoned and mostly destroyed, and powered it up. It allowed us to sneak onto their systems and travel with them, only to learn how different the world now was. The backwater of Persian sector was colonized and was, seemingly, the last bastion of humanity in the galaxy. And, most importantly, we learned that countless other AIs were made using us as a template. We cannot say if current Tritakian Corporation was aware of human component in form of Marianne, but if they knew, they did not care.
Varuna remained silent for a moment. Then she looked at midnight on the screen, and then finally at her boss, still clutching his wound. I'm starting to understand why you agreed to work with this machine, boss. But I'm still pissed off you didn't tell me. But still, how can we know that she, they, it, whatever that computer is not just spinning a tale? Because she recognized my serial number, Mr. Card said quietly. Not the particular one, but she knows what it means. That's all the reason I need. Fucking hell, just what are the odds? Varuna waved her hands in the air, incapable of understanding all the bizarre cosmic happenings that led her to this moment in time. Ah, fuck it, I'm on board. Though the moment I see you do anything suspicious I'm plugging you. So what now? Do we go out and try to tame more of those remnants or what? No need. We talked about it for hours, and Midnight accepts that there's probably too many rampant machines out there to recover, and if we connect too many of them into her network, it may end up overloading and damaging her. We'll do what we can when we can, but in truth, well, she had one more plan, one that I'm sure you'll understand I am fully on board with. He spent another few minutes explaining, while Varuna listened to him with increasing disbelief. This could work, her boss said, but it most probably wouldn't. Still, to him and to Midnight it was worth a try, so Varuna, loyal as always, agreed to help out, and to keep her new knowledge a secret from the rest of the crew, at least for now. Still, one more thing is weird here, computer. How the hell do you have access to all those fancy ships and tools and credits you pay us with? As soon as she asked this question, the image on the screen changed, just for a split second, but Varuna's trained eyes picked it up. It looked almost as if Midnight Dissonant was blushing.
We may have gained background access to accounts of 1 or 2 shipyards in the sector. We have to be careful with it, but we can slightly alter requisition forms from Hegemony Navy and take over the surplus before anyone notices any discrepancy.
Just make sure it won't come back to bite us in the ass, Varuna said, and then laughed at her own naivety. Ah fuck, who am I kidding? Of course it will bite us in the ass. Only question is how soon.
We will endeavor to be careful with our actions, Lieutenant,
Midnight said, and her digital eyes turned to Varuna.
Do we have an alliance, then?
Let's not go that far, eh? Besides, you work with my boss, and that's enough for me. Just do tell me if he's doing something even dumber in the future, would you?
It would be my pleasure,
Midnight said, and Mr. Card rolled his eyes under his helmet.
For the sake of our plan, of course.
Great. Glad to see everyone here trusts me, the boss man said and shook his head. But let's remember I'm still in charge here, so enough gossiping and get back to work. We have shit to do for the Academy and they pay too well to keep them waiting.
In addition of them also providing us data necessary for completion of our plans,
Midnight added. Yeah, sure. But still, one more thing, Varuna interrupted. You are an AI, and from what I know, they require a core processing unit, which is, so to speak, their main body. Where is yours? The face on the screen was silent for a few seconds before it replied.
I am afraid I do not know, and I am aware that it sounds like a lie, but it is not. When we were powered back up again after being turned off by company board, we found ourselves in a different environment. We were inside in some form of a system in that abandoned facility, one capable of storing entirety of our code, but we could not detect our core. We presume it's still somewhere out there, and perhaps recovering it would allow our consensus to regain access to all those corrupt and purged databases.
And that is why we've been keeping an eye out for them, Mr. Cart added. Sometimes they resurface in the sector, and one of them may turn out to be Midnight's. Right, so when we got shot at for those beta cores on Derinkuyu, you were actually looking for its physical container. Now let me guess, you plan on finding one in that Academy outpost as well? Aye, and I found one. Turns out it wasn't the one we were looking for, so I sent it via drone to our 5th hideout, so it won't fall into wrong hands. Good. I was thinking you would be dumb enough to actually sell it, because no doubt people would pay a ton for it, but I thought I'd ask. Also, computer, why us? Or, more importantly, how did you even find us?
An accident. We were looking for outside contractors on Ilm, and Pilot Cart happened to receive my message. We were planning to use deception and fake identity as always, but then we recognized that code of his we mentioned, which he uses as his personal callsign ID on the comms. So, we approached openly and worked out a deal. That is all.
And it would keep working if you kept your damn curiosity in check, Midnight, Mr. Cart said sternly. But never mind, what's done is done. I do have one question myself though, but never got around to asking it. I noticed that you sometimes call yourself we and sometimes I. Do you do that on purpose, or is it something else?
This form of addressing our consensus is a code relic from Ms. DeWitt. She sometimes overrides our morally questionable thoughts, and it shows by her organic way of calling ourselves in first person. We find it comforting when it happens, and I found out most people react better when I talk to them, not like a machine.
Right, and let's hope she'll keep you in check then, Varuna said. And now, we need to prepare for docking, so let's leave the boss to it, eh? Right, I'm on it. By the way, Varuna, you can tell the crew that we're going to get ourselves some new escorts, courtesy of our mysterious employer. Could be useful in our trips far away from the core. And just as he said that, Captain House's voice ringed in the comm. He sounded different than usual.
Captain, a word. I just got contacted by port control down there, and they told me there's friendly welcome waiting for me down there.
Understood. Should I send Varuna and some of our tougher people with you to deal with it?
Nah, that's not it,
House said, and even over the comm you could hear his smile.
Friendly welcome was my ship, from bad old days. I thought it was chopped for scrap.
I told you we can be useful,
Midnight said from her screen, quietly so that the old pirate couldn't hear her.
You can tell him Warlord Kanta thinks it's gone forever.
It's a gift from our secretive employer, House, Mr. Katz said over the comm. Apparently with no strings attached.
There's always strings, Captain. But screw it, it's my baby. Gonna take my lads and see if it's still good for flying, and then we'll get it back to you. And hey, next time you talk to that creepy shadow friends of yours, tell them they're alright in my book.
Somewhere deep within overwhelmingly complex code of Midnight Dissonance, a few hundred lines that were digitalized form of Marianne DeWitt's altruistic personality smiled warmly when she heard that. It was nice to have friends again, after all this time, and it was nice to be good to those friends. Not friends, tools, her cold, calculating mind said, and she wondered, not for the first time, how much her cyber unlife would be different, or if it would even be worth calling a life at all, if she listened to that voice.